Imagine this. You're in your cozy kitchen, preparing your morning tea. As you reach for the kettle, you notice a slight hesitation in your step. Climbing the stairs feels a tad more challenging, and rising from your favorite armchair requires a bit more effort. These changes are so subtle that they often go unnoticed until one day you realize that your legs don't feel as strong as they used to. It's a common experience for many over 60, but here's the truth. While aging brings changes, significant leg weakness isn't an inevitable part of growing older. With the right knowledge and actions, you can maintain and even improve your leg strength, ensuring independence and confidence in your daily life. 1. Silent muscle loss, the unseen culprit. Helen used to love tending her garden. Every morning, just after sunrise, she would stroll outside with her watering can in hand, bending and kneeling with ease among her roses and tomato plants. But around her 60th birthday, something started to change. It wasn't sudden, it crept in quietly. At first, it was just a little hesitation getting up from the floor. Then came the moments of uncertainty on the stairs. Her legs, once strong and steady, began to feel wobbly, weak. She found herself resting more often. Her doctor called it normal aging, but it didn't feel normal. It felt like something was being taken from her, slowly, silently. What Helen was experiencing had a name: sarcopenia, the gradual loss of muscle mass that begins as early as age 30. Most people don't notice it at first. It doesn't cause pain. There are no warning signs that scream for attention. But over the years, it chips away at strength, especially in the legs. By the time we reach 60, the changes can become undeniable. Trouble rising from chairs, climbing stairs, or even keeping balance while walking. And too often, people chalk it up to simply getting old, not realizing there's more to the story. But here's the truth. While aging plays a role, muscle loss is not an unchangeable fate. The body responds to effort, even in our 60s, 70s, and beyond. Helen didn't give up. With guidance from her physical therapist, she started doing simple resistance exercises at home. Gentle squats using the back of a chair for support, slow leg lifts while holding onto the kitchen counter, and light bodyweight movements just a few times a week. The exercises weren't flashy. They didn't require fancy equipment, but they were consistent. And slowly, she noticed the difference, not just in her legs, but in her confidence. She began walking farther, climbing stairs without fear. And one morning, she knelt down in the garden again, this time with strength she had reclaimed. The takeaway is clear. Muscle loss may be silent, but it is not unbeatable. By staying active and including resistance training in our routines, even in the simplest forms, we can maintain our strength, our independence, and the joys that matter most in life. 2. The silence between the brain and the body. George had always been quick on his feet. A proud grandfather of 5, he was the one who'd chase after the little ones in the yard, climb up the ladder to fix that loose shingle, or help his wife carry groceries in the house. But lately, something had changed. He started noticing little delays. He would think about reaching for a glass of water, but his hand responded just a second too late. When stepping off a curb, his foot would hesitate, as if the message from his brain had gotten lost along the way. He didn't feel pain, but he did feel uncertain. His balance wobbled more often. Once, he nearly tripped over the garden hose. Not because he didn't see it, but because his body didn't respond fast enough to avoid it. What George was experiencing wasn't uncommon. As we age, the communication between our nerves and muscles, the tiny electric messages that once zipped smoothly from the brain to the body, begins to slow down. It's not something we notice overnight. It creeps in gently, making everyday movements feel just a bit more awkward, a bit less steady. And unfortunately, it can quietly raise the risk of falls, which for older adults can be serious. But George didn't give up. He learned that there was something he could do. He started small. Every morning before breakfast, he'd spend 5 minutes standing on one foot, holding onto the kitchen counter for support. Some days were wobbly. Other days were steadier. He joined a Tai Chi class at the local community center. Nothing fancy, just slow, flowing movements that helped him feel connected to his body again. It wasn't about being perfect. It was about keeping the lines of communication open between his mind and muscles. Week by week, George noticed a change. His steps became more confident. He reacted quicker when one of the grandkids suddenly darted in his direction. That invisible delay began to shrink. Growing older comes with its share of challenges. But with intention and gentle practice, it's possible to restore trust in your own body, one step at a time. 3. Joint stiffness and reduced mobility. It often starts quietly. One morning, Mr. Thompson, a retired schoolteacher in his early 70s, noticed something different. As he stepped out of bed, his knees felt tight, almost stubborn. Walking to the kitchen took longer than usual, and he had to brace himself on the counter before making his morning coffee. It must just be the weather, he told himself, but days turned into weeks. The stiffness didn't go away. Going for his usual morning walk became harder. His stride grew shorter, his steps slower. He began skipping walks altogether. The more he stayed still, the weaker his legs felt. He found himself hesitating before getting up from the couch, afraid of the aching stretch in his joints. This isn't uncommon. As we age, the cartilage in our joints naturally wears down. The fluid that once helped our joints move smoothly, like oil in a machine, starts to dry up. Joints become stiff, painful, and harder to move. Simple tasks like walking or climbing stairs can feel like a chore. When movement becomes uncomfortable, we do less of it. But this leads to weaker muscles, less stability, and a greater risk of falls or injuries. The good news? There's something we can do about it. Low-impact exercises can make a world of difference. For Mr. Thompson, it was water aerobics at the local community center. The gentle resistance of the water took pressure off his joints while allowing him to move freely. Swimming, stationary cycling, or even chair yoga can help keep the joints lubricated and the muscles around them strong. In addition, simple stretching routines done daily or even just a few times a week can help restore flexibility. It's not about pushing hard. It's about moving gently and consistently. Joint stiffness doesn't mean life has to slow down completely. With the right steps, movement can become easier again. And sometimes, as Mr. Thompson found, the hardest part is simply deciding to move and keep moving. 4. Circulatory changes affecting muscle nourishment. For years, George loved starting his mornings with a brisk walk around the neighborhood. But lately, something had changed. Just a few steps into his usual route, his legs would feel heavy. His muscles tired more quickly than before, and sometimes they ached for hours afterward. Recovery wasn't what it used to be. He wasn't sure what was happening, but he knew something inside him had slowed down. This story isn't unique to George. As we age, our circulatory system naturally becomes less efficient. The heart may not pump as powerfully, and blood vessels can become stiffer. As a result, the muscles we once relied on so easily don't receive the same rich supply of oxygen and nutrients. This means more fatigue, longer recovery, and a subtle but frustrating loss of independence in everyday movements. You may notice it when climbing stairs feels harder than it used to, or when your legs feel swollen or cold more often. These aren't just signs of aging. They're signals from your body that it needs a little extra care. So what can you do? You don't need a gym or complicated routines. Simple movements can make a powerful difference. Gentle exercises like daily walks, calf raises while holding onto a chair, or even rotating your ankles while seated can stimulate blood flow and nourish your muscles. Elevating your legs for a few minutes during the day, especially after sitting or standing for a long time, can help reduce swelling and improve circulation. And don't forget something we often overlook: hydration. Drinking enough water helps your blood flow more easily, supporting your entire circulatory system. George started making these changes one at a time. A 10-minute walk in the morning, a few minutes with his legs propped up in the afternoon, a glass of water before each meal. And slowly, he felt something shift. Not everything was perfect, but he was recovering faster. He was moving more freely. And most importantly, He felt in control again. You don't have to accept fatigue as the new normal. Sometimes, all it takes is a few simple changes to feel more like yourself again. 5. A quiet shift in balance. It doesn't happen all at once. Maybe it starts with a small stumble on the garden path or a moment of unsteadiness while reaching for a plate in the kitchen. You might laugh it off at first, just a misstep, you tell yourself. But over time, these moments grow more frequent. And deep down, a quiet worry begins to settle in. What if I fall? As we age, the systems in our body that once kept us steady without a second thought begin to change. Inside our ears lies a tiny, complex part of the body that helps us stay balanced. It works closely with something called proprioception, our brain's way of knowing where our body is in space. But with age, these systems slow down. They become less responsive. The signals they send aren't as sharp. And so, the ground doesn't feel quite as solid as it once did. This isn't just about feeling wobbly. It's about the fear of falling, the loss of independence, and the deep desire to stay in control of our own bodies. And that's a feeling many don't talk about, but it's real and it's valid. But here's the good news. You could do something about it. You don't need a gym or fancy equipment. Balance can be trained, gently, consistently, with simple daily actions. Try walking heel to toe across the hallway each morning, like walking on a tightrope, slowly and mindfully. Or place a sturdy chair nearby and practice standing on one leg for a few seconds at a time. Some people use balance boards to challenge their body in new ways. These exercises wake up the muscles and nerves that support your balance, reminding them how to work together again. You're not trying to turn back the clock. You're strengthening what you already have. And every small effort matters, because staying steady on your feet means more than avoiding a fall. It means staying confident, mobile, and free to keep enjoying the life you love. 6. The fast hole of being still. Helen had always been active. Even into her late 60s, she walked every morning and tended to her small garden in the afternoon. But everything changed after a minor surgery forced her to stay in bed for just over a week. It didn't seem like much, 7 days of rest. But by the time she got back on her feet, she could feel the difference. Her legs felt weaker, stairs became harder, and carrying a basket of laundry suddenly left her out of breath. This wasn't just in her head. As we age, our bodies respond differently to inactivity. What once was a short break for a younger person becomes a much steeper climb for someone older. Muscles begin to shrink faster. Balance becomes less steady. Strength fades quickly, and unlike in our youth, it doesn't bounce back easily. For older adults, even brief periods of sitting still, due to illness, travel, or simply losing motivation, can cause noticeable setbacks. And unfortunately, each setback takes more effort to recover from than the last. It's not about vanity or fitness anymore. It's about independence, about being able to walk to the mailbox, reach the top shelf, or get out of bed without help. But there is good news. The solution doesn't lie in running marathons or lifting heavy weights. It starts with small, consistent steps. A daily walk around the block, 10 minutes of light stretching in the morning, gentle chair exercises while watching the evening news. These may seem simple, but they are powerful. They help keep muscles engaged, joints moving, and spirits lifted. Staying active isn't about doing what we used to. It's about doing what we can every day. And for people like Helen, that small effort means she can still take care of her garden, walk with her grandchildren, and live life on her own terms. Real life inspiration. Eleanor's journey back to strength. Eleanor had always been an independent woman. At 72, retired and enjoying the quiet rhythm of her days, she cherished her freedom. Simple things like tending to her flowers, walking to the mailbox, or preparing her favorite tea in the early morning sunlight. But one day, something changed. She noticed that her legs didn't feel as steady as before. A small wobble on the garden path, a slight hesitation on the stairs, the quiet fear of losing her balance. It crept in slowly but surely. She didn't tell anyone at first. Like many her age, Eleanor dismissed it, thinking maybe it was just a bad day or something she'd eaten, but the unease lingered. She started avoiding parts of the yard, holding on to furniture indoors, even sitting longer than she used to, just to feel safer. Then one morning, after nearly slipping in the kitchen, Eleanor sat down at the table, her heart beating fast, not from exertion, but from the fear of what was happening. That moment became a turning point. I don't want to live afraid of my own steps, she told herself. She didn't need a gym or fancy equipment. She simply began. Every morning, she took a gentle walk around her garden, just once at first, then twice. She added slow leg lifts while holding onto the back of a chair, followed by standing still on one foot for a few seconds, building her balance. Her movements were small, cautious, and mindful, but they were hers. Week by week, Eleanor noticed changes. Her legs grew steadier, her pace more confident. She didn't worry as much about slipping. She started using her cane less. What she regained wasn't just physical strength, it was her sense of freedom. Eleanor's story isn't dramatic. It's quiet, steady, and true, just like the strength she rebuilt one step at a time. Leg weakness after 60 can feel frightening. It can make simple activities harder, shake your confidence, and create a sense of dependence that none of us want. But here's the truth. It's not something you have to accept as your future. There are many reasons our legs may feel weaker as we age. Changes in muscle mass, balance, circulation, or even medications. The important thing is to recognize it early and respond with purpose. You don't need to run marathons or push your body beyond its limits. What you do need is consistency, gentle, intentional movements that match what your body can handle. Whether it's a short daily walk, light leg stretches, or a few minutes of balance practice while holding onto a counter, each action builds a foundation of strength. This isn't about going back to the way things were 20 years ago. It's about protecting your independence now and in the years to come. Start with something small today. Just a few steps in your living room, a walk to the mailbox, or standing up and sitting down from a chair 5 times. These small efforts grow. They restore more than muscles. They restore confidence. Your future self, stronger, steadier, and more self-assured, will thank you.